Let's dive into this thrilling story. Survive. Imagine Earth, the planet that's 70% water. But what if one day, all that water decided to shift over to the remaining 30% of land? That's exactly the wild concept this movie explores. Our story starts with Tom, an oceanographer, his wife Julia, and their kids Casey and Ben, who are all headed to the Caribbean to celebrate little Ben's birthday. The family plans to spend a few relaxing days on a boat in the wide, blue ocean. Now, Tom's work as an oceanographer means he studies the sea and everything living in it. But today, he isn't thinking about work. He's focused on making it a special day for Ben. As they enjoy their day on the water, Julia decides to go for a swim. She dives in, but something feels off. Like the water is alive or shifting somehow. It's subtle at first, so she brushes it off. Meanwhile, on the boat, Tom is distracted, not noticing that some of their equipment is starting to act up. Just as he's about to check on things, he realizes Julia's not in sight. And in the water, Julia starts to feel something alarming. The sea itself seems to be moving around her, pulling her away from the boat. She yells, but the distance grows, and the waves seem to be carrying her further and further away. Suddenly, Tom snaps out of his daze and realizes his wife is no longer on board. He hears her desperate cries and, without a second thought, he races to get the boat turned around, speeding back to where Julia is struggling against the current. Without hesitation, Tom dives into the water, fighting against the shifting sea to reach Julia. After a tense few moments, he grabs her, and together, they manage to make it safely back onto the boat. But it's clear now, something strange is happening with the ocean, and their peaceful getaway might turn into a race to survive. Once the kids pull Julia back onto the boat, she's finally safe. But Tom is furious. He had already warned everyone to inform the family before jumping into the water. Julia apologizes, realizing her mistake. Wanting to keep the mood light for Ben's birthday, they decide to brush off the strange incident and move on with the celebration. After all, they didn't notice that the water shifting like that was unusual, nor did they pay much attention to the boat's equipment acting up. As evening falls, they decorate the boat and start Ben's 13th birthday celebration. Gifts are exchanged, laughter fills the air, and the family captures these happy moments with photos. Later, Casey, Ben's older sister, receives a video call from her boyfriend. She excitedly tells him about their time on the boat, but he interrupts with a warning. There's a huge storm building, and it's not just affecting their area, it's happening worldwide. Casey's boyfriend explains that it's all over the news, and these storms are more intense than ever. Casey feels a chill run down her spine, but before she can ask him more, their connection drops. Panicked, Casey rushes to tell her family about the strange, massive storm hitting the whole world. As they try to process this, they suddenly hear loud thumping sounds against the boat. Looking out, they see something surreal. Huge whales circling the boat, repeatedly bumping into it. These whales aren't even supposed to be in these waters, which makes everyone realize that something is seriously wrong. The constant collisions eventually damage the boat's engine, so Tom dives into the water to assess the damage. When he returns, they're shocked to see a cut on his shoulder. Tom explains that the engine's been damaged by a collision with a massive whale. Now, stranded in the middle of the ocean, they realize this trip has turned into something far more dangerous than they'd imagined. Realizing he can't fix the engine, Tom worries that they're stranded in the middle of the sea. The boat is stuck, and when he tries to call for help, he discovers there's no signal, not even the radio is working. The family is puzzled. Why would everything shut down at once? Tom quickly calculates their supplies, telling the family they have enough food, water, and power to last for a while. Since they're on a shipping route, he reassures them that passing ships should spot them soon. But there's one problem. They have no idea what's going on in the rest of the world. Just then, they hear a strange rumbling noise from outside. Rushing to check, they see countless objects falling from the sky, like shooting stars but way too close. In a rush, Tom starts steering the boat forward, trying to dodge the falling debris despite the damaged engine. They manage to avoid getting hit, but it's a close call. As they look closer, Tom realizes these objects are satellites. This explains the loss of phone and radio signals, but why would satellites suddenly fall from the sky? No one has an answer. A massive storm begins to rage around them. The waves grow wild, and the boat is violently tossed around. Tom gathers his family on the upper deck, instructing them to put on life jackets and hold on tight. But then, they notice something even stranger. The boat is breaking apart from all sides. Panicked, they rush out, bracing for the worst. What they see next shocks them to the core. There's no water beneath their boat. It's standing on dry ground in the middle of what looks like a vast desert. But they soon realize it's no desert at all. They're still in the middle of the ocean. The water has simply vanished, shifted somewhere else. In that moment, the family grasps the horrifying truth. If all the ocean water has moved to the land, then almost everything and everyone on Earth would be submerged, leaving only empty ocean floors behind. Tom checks his compass and finds it's malfunctioning. It's clear now that both the magnetic poles and everything they knew about their world has shifted. In disbelief, they realize that their friends, loved ones, and probably everyone they've ever known are likely gone. Their once peaceful family trip has now turned into a desperate fight for survival on a planet that no longer looks like home. The tension on the boat rises as Casey returns to the cabin, tears streaming down her face. Her boyfriend is gone, lost to the chaos of the night. The family is at a loss, unsure of what to do next. In a moment of quiet desperation, Casey remembers the birthday balloons she had released the night before. Maybe, just maybe, they could help signal any other survivors. If there are others out there, they could face this nightmare together. Tom decides to send out a distress signal using the radio, hoping to reach anyone nearby. To their surprise, he connects with a small submarine. A man named Nato is on the other end. He explains that he was deep underwater with his crew when the catastrophe struck. Tragically, he's the only one left alive. As they talk, Tom and Nato begin discussing their options. They both realize that the world they knew might no longer exist, and any potential help might be gone. Nato shares his calculations, explaining that the water has shifted far away, and he plans to reach his original position in a week. He feels confident he can survive in the submarine, but Tom needs to find higher ground quickly before the water returns. With urgency, Tom asks Nato if his family can come aboard the submarine. Unfortunately, Nato informs him that the vessel is small and can only hold 3 people at most. Tom quickly devises a plan. He offers to send his 2 children to the submarine while he and Julia find higher ground together. He even promises to give Nato all of their food in exchange for safe passage for Casey and Ben. After some negotiation, Nato agrees and gives Tom the submarine's location on a map. Tom explains to Julia what they need to do. They pack their food and water, preparing for the dangerous journey ahead. It will take them 2 days to reach Nato's submarine, and they know that time is of the essence. Their plan is risky. They might not make it themselves, but at least their children will be safe. Just as they're about to leave, Tom spots a figure approaching. A man is coming toward them with a dog, but he looks hurt and exhausted. Tom's heart sinks for this stranger. Despite their own struggles, he feels compassion for the man who looks like he's been through a lot. As the man gets closer, Tom can see the desperation in his eyes. He knows they need to stay focused on their mission, but he can't just turn away from someone in need. As Tom grabs a water bottle to help the man, something completely unexpected happens. The man suddenly lunges at him, attacking him violently. Julia sees this horrifying turn of events and immediately rushes forward to help her husband. But the stranger, without a moment's hesitation, pulls out a spear and brutally strikes Tom. Julia lets out a terrified scream as Tom collapses, killed in cold blood by the very man he was trying to help. Julia stands frozen for a second, heart pounding, but she quickly realizes the man will likely come after her next. She can tell he's here to steal all their supplies, their food, their water, and he won't show mercy. With terror fueling her every move, she dashes back to the boat, rushing to her children, Casey and Ben, and tells them they need to hide right away because the dangerous stranger is headed straight toward them. With the stranger closing in, Julia acts fast. She locks the cabin door, then urges her kids to hide in the smallest spaces they can find on the boat. She hands them a flare gun, instructing them on how to use it in case they're in danger. Then, summoning her courage, she prepares to face the man herself. The stranger begins bashing against the locked cabin door, desperate to get inside and claim whatever supplies he can find. As soon as he breaks through, he spots the food and water and starts consuming it greedily, all while scanning the boat to see what else he can grab. Julia, hiding above, watches his every move with a knife clutched tightly in her hand, waiting for the right moment to strike. But the stranger's senses are sharp, and he hears the slightest sound. Realizing he's not alone, he begins looking around, and Julia quickly hides under part of the boat to avoid being seen. Just then, the man's dog catches Julia's scent and bolts toward her, snarling. Julia, knife ready, has no choice but to defend herself, fighting off the dog until she manages to take it down. The stranger hears the sound of his dog's yelp and comes running out, his face contorting with anger when he realizes Julia has killed his dog. He still doesn't know about her children hiding inside, but Julia knows he'll find them if she doesn't act fast. She climbs back onto the boat, knife in hand, preparing to launch a surprise attack on him from behind. But just as she gets close, he turns around, ready and waiting, and now she finds herself face to face with a dangerous stranger, trapped in a fight for survival. The man begins asking about what other things are on board, and Casey and Ben, hiding in a small box, overhear him. Realizing this man will likely harm their mother, Casey bravely opens the box, aims the flare gun, and fires it directly at the man's face. The flare explodes, injuring him badly, and the flare's sparks start a fire on the boat. Julia sees this and quickly tells her kids to escape from the boat while she grabs the bag of food she packed. As she heads for the food, the man tries to seize it too, but Julia kicks him away. She manages to get hold of the bag and jumps off the burning boat with her children. Outside, Casey and Ben are in tears, seeing their father, Tom, who has been killed. Julia tries her best to comfort them, holding them close, but just then, she sees the man leaving the burning boat as well. Wasting no time, Julia decides they have to move fast. She recalls the location of the NATO submarine from the radio coordinates and sets off with her children in that direction. They walk for a long time, finally reaching a large rock where they can rest and build a small shelter. Although there's water flowing nearby, it isn't safe to drink them. Casey blames herself, feeling guilty that her father died, thinking it was her fault that they're in this mess. Julia hugs her children, assuring them that it wasn't their fault, and reminds them they need to stay focused on surviving. They'll figure everything else out later. Unfortunately, Their map burned in the boat fire, making it even harder to find the way to the submarine, and Julia knows it will take a lot of time. As she scans the area from a rock, Julia notices the man still tracking them, likely because they managed to take all the food supplies. She realizes they can't stay here and pushes them to keep moving forward. They walk for hours, exhausted, but Julia doesn't let them rest, knowing they need to stay ahead of their pursuer. The ground is rough and uneven, and even the sea nearby looks wild and unpredictable. Still, they keep going, driven by the need to survive. As they continue on their journey, the family notices that the water has receded from the surface of the sea. All around them, they see plastic bottles and other trash littering the area, evidence of humans throwing garbage into the ocean. With the water running low, there's hardly anything left to drink. When Ben starts to feel dehydrated, Julia makes the tough decision to drink the last of the remaining water, knowing how much her children need it. Casey, still feeling discouraged, questions where they are going and wonders what guarantee they have of finding the submarine. She expresses her fear that the ocean could return at any moment, and they might be doomed. But Julia, filled with determination, shouts at them to keep moving forward, refusing to give up hope. As they walk on, they come across the wreckage of a broken plane, clearly a relic that must have crashed into the sea centuries ago. It's the first time they've seen something like this. Julia decides it's best to spend the night near the plane, feeling overwhelmed by how much has happened in just one day. As she sits there, she finds their last family photo, a snapshot of happier times when they were all together. Both kids begin to remember their father, Tom, and the warmth of their family life. But they know that their main goal now is to find the submarine and reach safety. That night, while they try to sleep, Casey wakes up, curious about a sound she hears. Just then, the same man from before sneaks up behind her, ready to attack. However, Casey had gone there intentionally to lure him away from the others. At that moment, Julia jumps in from behind, catching the man off guard. With quick reflexes, she plunges her knife into him, eliminating the greatest threat to her family. They've narrowly escaped a deadly situation. When morning arrives, the three of them wake up to find there's no sign of the man's body. It dawns on them that some creatures from the sea must be roaming around, making their journey even more dangerous. As they move forward, their conditions worsen due to a lack of drinking water. Along the way, Ben, desperate for hydration, reaches for some bad water and starts to drink it. Julia quickly stops him, warning that it could make him sick. Julia refuses to let Ben drink the bad water, knowing it will make him sick. They continue walking all day, covering a long distance. By evening, they manage to find some garbage to create a makeshift shelter for the night. As they settle down, Julia suddenly hears strange noises coming from outside. When she looks out, she sees that a large number of crabs are nearby, and they look threatening. In a panic, Julia quickly grabs her children and runs away from the area. As they escape, they spot a big ship filled with overturned containers. Julia notices that many people are hiding inside those containers, and she decides it's safer to go there with her children to escape the crabs. However, when they reach the containers, the people inside slam the doors shut at the sight of the crabs. Despite their pleas to let them in, the doors remain closed, forcing Julia and her children to climb up onto the containers to save themselves. During the chaos, a crab manages to bite Julia on the leg. From their high vantage point, they see that many crabs have entered the containers and are attacking the people inside. They can hear the terrified screams of those who are being attacked, which fills Julia with dread. Eventually, overwhelmed and injured, Julia loses consciousness after tying a scarf around her wound to stop the bleeding. The next morning, Julia wakes up to find her children missing. For a moment, panic sets in, but then she spots them nearby, safe and sound. They tell her they were looking for food supplies after the crabs left. Julia takes a moment to care for her wound, while the children gather up any weapons they can find, preparing for another possible crab attack. They also manage to find a little food and some water. After eating, they feel a bit more courageous. Julia discovers a radio from a deceased survivor and decides to contact NATO on the submarine. When she gets through, NATO informs her that they were also attacked by crabs and that he has been badly injured. He delivers more troubling news. The creatures are coming this way because the seawater is returning sooner than expected. This means that in just a few hours, the ocean water will be back, and they need to reach the submarine before that happens. Julia begins to cry, feeling hopeless about how they can find NATO since they don't even have a map. In response, NATO fires his last flare gun into the sky to show them the direction. When Ben and Julia see the flare, they feel a surge of happiness, realizing they are still heading in the right direction. The submarine is just a few kilometers away. They quickly start moving forward, and finally, they spot the submarine in the distance. However, they soon encounter a rocky wall that has formed due to the ocean waves. Casey looks at Julia and asks what they should do. Julia tells them to keep moving and figure it out as they go. As they try to cross the rocky path, a big stone falls, causing Julia to get separated from Ben and Casey. She shouts at them to run ahead to the submarine, insisting they must go on without her. With tears in their eyes, Casey and Ben leave their mother behind and race toward the submarine. When they reach it, they find NATO, who is badly injured. He tells them that he might not be able to escape and that only the three of them can board the submarine. Hearing this, Casey makes a brave decision to go back for Julia, knowing they need to survive together. Meanwhile, Julia fights off a swarm of crabs that is coming toward her. She starts shooting at them, but her bullets are running low. Just then, Casey arrives, pulling her out from behind the rocks. Even though the crabs are still right behind them, they quickly run up to the roof of the submarine. As they stand there, they see the crabs below them and realize that the seawater is coming back. In a final push, the three of them leap into the submarine just as the waves begin to rise. Julia reflects on how she fought to save her family over the past few days. The submarine starts to drift away with the flow of the water, and they all lose consciousness. A few hours later, they wake up to find the submarine has come out of the water and is stuck somewhere. They step outside and are shocked to see that they've returned to their city. However, it's eerily quiet, and they realize they are the only ones left alive. They may be the last survivors on Earth. Now, they must figure out how to survive in this desolate world. With this thrilling ending, the story concludes. By the way, if you are new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe for more exciting videos.